Good evening. Tonight I would like to discuss the social justice movement. But first I would like to define what social justice is, and it is the idea that all people should have equal rights and opportunities. While I completely agree with this ideology, I must also point out that this end does not just necessarily justify the means that the movement has taken to achieve it. And as such, my main claim is that the actions of the social justice movement are detrimental to free speech. My secondary claim is that modern social justice movement A uses political correctness in an attempt to suppress facts that run counter to the ideology. B uses privilege as a label to discredit the validity of opposing arguments. And C, they prevent any rational discussion on controversial issues. First off, I would like to look further at the proposition that they use political correctness to suppress opposing ideology. They generally do so through means of accusations of racism or sexism. For example, how after proceeding to Hoff Summers, the factual feminist, commonly known as, wrote her book, The War Against Boys, which details the misfortunes that boys face in society, namely the educational sphere. Her book was deemed politically incorrect on the basis that it was backlash against women, despite only pointing out the misfortunes that boys face. In a similar example, Larry Summers, who was a former Harvard president, was accused of sexism after finding in a study that men had more variability in intelligence than women. Basically, he looked at test scores and found that there were more men on both extremes, both the upper and lower, of these test scores. Now, not only are these accusations mostly baseless, but they serve no real intellectual purpose. I mean, they don't prove an argument or anything. Similarly, the movement uses privilege as able to discredit these logical arguments. It's basically a form of the ad hominem fallacy, where it focuses on the arguer rather than the argument. And basically it and it's pretty widespread. It goes to places. It's pretty common on college campuses, even some of the Ivy League schools such as Princeton. A student, Tal Fortgang, wrote about it about approximately a year ago in the Princeton Tory, and it threatened to strike down opinions without regard for their merits, but rather on the basis of who's giving the argument, which, again, is ad hominem fallacy. Thirdly, the movement prevents any rational discussion on controversial issues. Now, fairly recently, not even a week ago, there was an event in Alberta, Canada, known as the Calgary Expo, where a group known as the Honey Badger Brigade was banned from the expo. For what? They were given no evidence initially, and no evidence presented, no request made for information on their side of the story, and no specific incidents given until they spoke with security members who mentioned the Women in Comics panel discussion, and apparently there were accusations of harassment, although I did look at the video of the panel, and while there was no harassment, there was some disagreement with certain feminist groups in the audience and on the panel. So essentially they were banned for disagreeing with the social justice movement. And as a result, if dissenters are punished, according to Steven Pinker, a Harvard professor, then if they're punished and can anticipate punishment, then you might have a situation where nobody actually believes something but believes that everyone else does, and nobody's going to speak out against it. Nobody's going to voice a controversy. And as we have all learned here, I believe, by silencing opposition, no controversy exists. And if no controversy exists, there is no argument. So in a sense, the social justice movement is silencing any opposition to push their agenda, which is a detriment to free speech. And I would like to close the speech by restating my main claim that the actions of the modern social justice movement are detrimental to free speech. And I would like to leave you off on one phrase. Check your facts, not your privilege. Good night, everyone. Oh, yes.
All right, the proposition's clearly stated. There's a good preview of what the supporting structure is. As you get to that structure in the body of the speech, you signpost the first point. The second point got buried a little bit, and then the third point I thought was a little bit more distinct. You explain each of the points pretty effectively. I do think, though, that you need stronger proof on some of the points. You've got a single illustration that you have on the first point. Well, actually, I guess you have two, because you have both Larry Summers and you have the war against boys as illustrations on that particular point. But I'm not sure how typical that is. I mean, there are thousands of universities and colleges. There are hundreds of thousands of meetings and conferences every year, and in essence, you have basically taken a couple of examples and created a pretty broad generalization from that. I do think that there may, in fact, be some additional ways to show that this is, in fact, a strategy, and that it is having both a chilling effect, like you describe, and it is effectively silenced people with dissenting views, and I think that you need to be able to demonstrate that a little bit more forcefully. Like I said, the explanation of the concepts I thought was pretty good. The notion that it's really a ad hominem argument is fine. The idea, though, that this is a policy, a strategy, a consistent way in which social justice movement, the social justice movement behaves, that's where I think you need to be able to make a stronger generalization. And I think that there are authors who have written about this that are pretty critical of this kind of thing, and their opinions might be another way that you could make a generalization that's a little bit stronger. Let's see. You got stuck in a couple of places explaining concepts, but at the end I thought you summarized it pretty well. A little more practice probably would have helped on the delivery.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you.
Thanks.